My mother, Linda, had never asked for much in life. She was one of those women who could make almost nothing feel like enough. When I was a child, I thought she had some special talent for it. If money was tight, she could turn a simple meal into something that felt warm and complete. If our old house had a problem, she would find a way to laugh about it until my brother and I stopped worrying. She had raised Mark and me mostly on her own. Our father left when I was young. I remember very little about him, and over the years, I learned that my mother had worked hard to make sure his absence did not become the center of our lives. She never filled our heads with anger. She never told us to hate him. She simply worked. She worked at a small cleaning company during the day. Sometimes she took extra work on weekends. She cleaned offices. She cleaned houses. She ironed clothes for people who had more clothes than our whole family. And somehow she still came home and made dinner. As a child, I did not understand how hard her life was. I only knew that my mother was always tired, but she never complained. Mark was 3 years younger than me. We were close when we were children, though we became different people as we grew older. Mark was outgoing. He liked attention. He made friends easily and always seemed comfortable in a room full of people. I was quieter. I liked working with my hands. I liked solving problems. I liked knowing that if something was broken, there was a way to fix it. When I was 19, I started working with a construction company. I began at the bottom. Long hours. Heavy work. Early mornings. I was proud of every paycheck. Not because it was a lot of money, but because I could finally give some of it to my mother. First she refused. "Daniel, you need to save for yourself," she would say. I would put the money on the kitchen table anyway. And she would sigh. That was how we loved each other. Quietly. Stubbornly. Years passed. I worked hard, learned the business, and eventually started my own small construction company. It was not an easy road. There were months when I thought I had made a terrible mistake. There were contracts that fell through. Workers who left. Equipment that broke at the worst possible time. But slowly the company grew. And while my life changed, my mother's did not change very much. She was still living in the same old house. The roof leaked when it rained heavily. The kitchen cabinets were worn. The heating system was old. The neighborhood had changed too. It was no longer the place I remembered from childhood. Every time I visited, I noticed something else that needed repair. One day I found my mother standing on a chair, trying to change a light bulb. I nearly had a heart attack. "Mom," I said. "What are you doing?" She looked down at me and smiled. "Changing a light bulb. You could fall. I have been climbing on chairs longer than you've been alive. That doesn't make it safer." She laughed, but I did not. That night I went home and started looking at houses. I did not tell her right away. I knew she would refuse. So I made a plan. I found a beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. It was not a mansion, but it was large, comfortable, and safe. 3 bedrooms. A bright kitchen. A small garden. A porch where my mother could sit in the morning with her coffee. The house cost $600,000. It was more money than I had ever imagined spending on a home when I was younger. But by then my business was doing well. I had saved carefully. I had no children of my own. I had lived below my means for years. And more than anything, I wanted my mother to have something she had never had before. Security. So I bought it. I still remember bringing her there for the first time. She thought we were simply looking at a house because one of my clients was thinking of buying it. When we walked inside, she looked around slowly. "It's beautiful," she said. Then she looked at me. "But why are we here?" I handed her the keys. She stared at them. I said, "Because this is yours, Mom." She did not understand at first. She looked at the keys, then at me, then back at the keys. "Daniel," she whispered. I nodded. She began to cry. I had seen my mother cry before, but never like that. These were not loud tears. She covered her mouth with one hand and shook her head as if she could not believe what was happening. "I can't accept this," she said. "Yes, you can." "No. Mom. It's too much." I took her hand. "It's not too much. You gave me a life. You gave me a chance to become the man I am. Let me do this one thing for you." She hugged me so tightly that day, and I thought I had finally repaid a small part of what I owed her. But life has a strange way of showing us that money can solve some problems while creating others we never expected. At the time I did not see it. Not until Vanessa came into our lives. Mark met Vanessa about 4 years before everything happened. First, I liked her. She was confident and well-spoken. She had a good job in sales and always seemed to know what to say. She brought gifts to family dinners. She complimented my mother's cooking. She laughed easily. My mother liked her too. I remember one evening after Vanessa had gone home, my mother said, "She seems very nice. Mark is happy." That was all my mother wanted for either of us. She never asked whether someone was rich or impressive. If they treated her sons well, she welcomed them. Mark and Vanessa got married about a year later. The wedding was expensive, though not because my mother or I had pushed for it. Vanessa had very specific ideas. She wanted a certain venue, a certain photographer, a certain kind of flowers. Mark laughed about it at first. "That's just Vanessa," he would say. And I would laugh too. Maybe that was our mistake. Maybe we ignored too many small things because they seemed harmless. After the wedding, Mark and Vanessa moved into an apartment closer to the city. They visited my mother often, especially after I bought her the new house. At first everything seemed normal. Then Vanessa began making little comments. Nothing terrible. Nothing I could point to and say, "This is unacceptable." But small comments have a way of building up. One afternoon, my mother mentioned that she had spent the morning in the garden. Vanessa looked at her hands and said, "Well, you're good at that kind of work." My mother smiled. She did not take it badly. Another time, Vanessa came over and saw my mother folding some blankets. "You really don't know how to relax, do you?" she said. "You always need to be doing something." My mother laughed. "I suppose I'm used to it." Vanessa laughed too. But there was something in her tone that I did not like. Still I said nothing. Then came the dinners. Vanessa began inviting people to my mother's house. First she would ask, "Linda, would it be okay if Mark and I had a few friends over on Saturday?" My mother would always say yes. Of course she would. That was who she was. Then Vanessa stopped asking me. She started telling my mother, "We're having some people over Friday." Or, "My sister is coming this weekend." My mother would cook extra food. She would set out clean towels. She would make sure the guest rooms were ready. One day I asked her why. "Why are you doing all this?" My mother looked confused. "Because they're family." I sighed. "Mom, they're not your responsibility." She smiled at me. "Daniel, I enjoy having people here." I believed her. And maybe she did enjoy it at first. But I started noticing things. When I arrived at the house, my mother was always doing something for everyone else. Bringing drinks, washing dishes, cleaning up. And Vanessa was sitting comfortably in the living room like she owned the place. The strange part was that Mark seemed not to notice. Or maybe he noticed and did not want to get involved. I had never understood how dangerous silence could be until then. One evening I arrived early for a family dinner. My mother was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. Vanessa was standing near the counter, scrolling through her phone. "Where's Mark?" I asked. "Running late," she said. Then she looked toward my mother. "Linda, could you make sure we have enough ice?" My mother immediately put down the knife. "I think there's some in the freezer." I stared at Vanessa. My mother was not a servant. She was not an employee. She was a 68-year-old woman in her own home. But my mother had spent most of her life caring for people. She did not know how to sit still when there was something to be done. That was the problem. People like Vanessa saw that kindness and slowly began to expect it. I pulled my mother aside later that night. "Does Vanessa order you around when I'm not here?" My mother looked surprised. "No. She just asks for things." "Mom." She became quiet. Then she said, "Daniel, please don't start a problem between you and your brother." I hated hearing that. Because I knew what she was really saying. Please protect the peace. My mother had spent her entire life protecting the peace. Even when it cost her something. So I tried to be patient. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself that family relationships were complicated. I told myself that if something truly bad happened, I would know. Then, about 6 months later, I received a call from my mother. She sounded embarrassed. "Daniel, are you busy?" I immediately knew something was wrong. "No. What happened? Well, the dishwasher stopped working. I laughed gently. That's why you called me? She paused. No. That one word changed everything. I sat down. What is it, Mom? She took a breath. Vanessa is having friends over tomorrow. She asked me if I could get someone to fix it before then. I was quiet. Then I asked, did she ask you to pay for it? Another pause. My mother did not answer. I closed my eyes. Mom. She said it was important. That was enough. I drove to the house that evening. Vanessa was there. She looked surprised to see me. Hey, Daniel. I nodded. Where's my mother? In the kitchen. I walked in and found my mother making tea. I asked her to sit down. Then I called Vanessa into the room. Mark arrived a few minutes later. I explained calmly that the house was my mother's home, and that no one should ever make her feel responsible for maintaining a lifestyle for other adults. Vanessa crossed her arms. I didn't mean anything by it. Then why did you ask her to pay for it? I didn't ask her to pay. My mother looked down. I looked at Vanessa. Mom. My mother whispered. She said I should take care of it. Vanessa sighed loudly. Oh, come on. I said the house needed to be taken care of. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice calm. Then you can take care of it. Or Mark can. But you will not speak to my mother as if she works for you. Mark finally spoke. Daniel, Vanessa didn't mean it like that. There it was again. The excuse. Not what she said. What she meant. I looked at my brother. Mark, sometimes people show you exactly who they are. You just have to listen. Vanessa left the room after that. Mark followed her. My mother cried. Not because of Vanessa. She cried because she hated conflict. And I realized then that even defending her could hurt her if I did it in a way that made her feel responsible for the damage. So I apologized. Mom, I'm sorry. She shook her head. You did nothing wrong. But we both knew things had changed. After that night, Vanessa was careful around me. Too careful. She smiled when I was there. She asked my mother politely if she needed anything. She brought flowers. And for a while, I thought maybe the message had been received. But when someone only respects you because another person is watching, that is not respect. It is performance. And eventually the performance ends. The day everything changed was a Sunday. My mother had invited the family for lunch. Or at least that was what she told me. When I arrived, there were nearly 20 people in the house. Some were relatives of Vanessa. Others were friends. Cars were parked along the street. Music was playing softly in the living room. My mother had cooked enough food for what looked like a small celebration. I found her in the kitchen wearing an apron. Mom, I said. What is all this? She looked tired. Oh, Vanessa wanted to have a little get-together. Did she ask you? My mother gave me a weak smile. She said it would be nice. I looked around. There were decorations. There were flowers. There were expensive bottles of wine on the counter. And suddenly I understood that this was not a little get-together. Vanessa had planned an event in my mother's home, without asking anyone who had a right to make that decision. I took off my jacket. Sit down, I told my mother. Oh, Daniel, I'm fine. Mom. Sit. She smiled at me and shook her head. You sound like your father. I smiled a little. That is not a compliment. She laughed. For a moment, everything felt normal. I helped her carry dishes into the dining room. I greeted people. I spoke to Mark. He seemed distracted. I asked him quietly, did you know Vanessa invited all these people? He looked uncomfortable. She wanted to celebrate her promotion. Why didn't she tell me? He shrugged. Why would she? I stared at him. Because this was not his house. Because it was not Vanessa's house. Because the woman whose house it was had spent all morning preparing food for a party she had not truly agreed to. But I said nothing. Not yet. Lunch began. People ate. They laughed. They complimented the house. Vanessa was in the center of everything. I watched my mother move quietly from room to room. Every few minutes someone asked her for something. A drink. A napkin. More food. And my mother provided it. First I tried to help. Then Vanessa said, Daniel, relax. Your mom likes doing this. I looked at her. My mother was carrying another tray. She should be sitting down. Vanessa smiled. She won't. Something about the way she said it made my stomach turn. Not concern. Not affection. Certainty. She knew my mother would keep serving people because my mother had been taught, through years of habit, to put everyone else first. And Vanessa was using that. Later, I stepped outside to take a phone call. One of my workers needed help with a project. I spoke with him for about 10 minutes. When I came back inside, I heard laughter from the dining room. I followed the sound. That was when I saw my mother carrying the tray of empty glasses. And that was when I heard Vanessa say those words. The help here is very good. The room went silent after I asked her who she had called the help. Vanessa tried to laugh it away. Oh, Daniel. It was a joke. I looked at my mother. She was staring at the floor. That was enough. I took the tray from her hands. Mom, go sit down. Then I faced Vanessa. You've been here all day, I said. Did you cook anything? Her face changed. No. Did you clean anything? Daniel. Did you invite people into this house? She looked at Mark. I turned to him. Did she ask Mom before inviting all these people? Mark did not answer. That told me everything. I looked back at Vanessa. You have been treating my mother like a host, a cook, and now apparently a servant. I said I was joking. Jokes are supposed to be funny. The silence in the room became heavier. One of Vanessa's friends quietly stood up and moved toward the kitchen. Nobody wanted to be there anymore. But I continued speaking calmly. I bought this house for my mother because I wanted her to rest. Do you understand that? I did not spend $600,000 so you could use her home as a free event space. Vanessa's eyes filled with anger. So what? You think you own everything? I took a slow breath. No. I think I own the responsibility for the decision I made. Mark finally stepped forward. Daniel, stop. I looked at him. Stop what? You're embarrassing her. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I could not believe what I was hearing. I pointed toward my mother. She was embarrassed. Mark looked away. I said, and you stood here and watched. He did not answer. My heart broke a little then. Not because I was angry at Vanessa. I expected more from my brother. We had been raised by the same woman. We had watched her work until her hands hurt. We had watched her sacrifice. And now he could not say one simple sentence in her defense. I turned to the guests. I'm sorry your afternoon is ending this way, but this gathering is over. Vanessa stared at me. You can't kick my guests out. I looked at her. You don't get to tell me what I can do with the home I paid for. She smiled bitterly. And there it is. The money. No, I said. The money is not the problem. The problem is that you forgot whose house you were standing in. People began leaving. Some quietly apologized to my mother. Others avoided eye contact. Vanessa did not speak to me again that day. Mark drove her home. My mother sat on the sofa for a long time after everyone left. I sat beside her. For several minutes, neither of us said anything. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. I turned toward her. For what? For causing trouble. I felt tears in my eyes. Mom, you did not cause this. But Mark and Vanessa. Mom. She looked at me. You are not responsible for other people choosing to disrespect you. She began to cry. I held her hand, and I made a decision that night. A decision I did not tell anyone about right away. The house had been bought with one purpose, to give my mother a home. But I had made a mistake. I had left the ownership structure in a legal arrangement that allowed me to protect the property, while my mother lived there. I had also allowed too much family access because I thought trust was enough. It was not. Trust without boundaries can become an invitation for the wrong people to take advantage. So the next morning I called my lawyer. I asked him to review everything. I asked what I needed to do to make sure my mother had full control over who entered her home, and how the property was used. Then I started changing things. Not to punish Vanessa. Not even to punish Mark. But to protect my mother. New locks. Clear rules. No family gatherings without her agreement. No one staying overnight without her invitation. And most importantly, no one treating the house as if it belonged to them. I did not announce these changes dramatically. I simply acted. That was the part Vanessa did not understand. She thought the confrontation at the party was the ending. It was not. It was the beginning. For the first few days after the party, Mark did not call me. Vanessa sent me a message. It said, "You completely overreacted and humiliated me in front of everyone." I read it twice. Then I put my phone down. I did not respond. The next message came from Mark. "Can we talk?" I agreed. We met at a small coffee shop near his office. When he arrived, he looked tired. So did I. For a while we talked about nothing. Then he finally said, "Vanessa is upset." I nodded. "I know. She thinks you hate her." "I don't hate her." "Then why did you do all this?" I leaned back in my chair. "Mark, what do you think I did?" "You embarrassed her." I shook my head. "No. I stopped her from embarrassing Mom." He was quiet. I continued. "You saw what happened." She was joking. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I asked, "Did Mom laugh?" He looked down. "No." "Did anyone else laugh?" "No." "Then what exactly was funny?" He had no answer. I softened my voice. "Mark, I don't want to fight with you. You're my brother. I love you. But you keep asking me to understand Vanessa, while nobody asks Vanessa to understand Mom." His eyes filled with sadness. "It's not that simple." "No," I said. "It is simple. It's just difficult." He sat quietly for a while. Then he admitted something I had not expected. "Vanessa has been saying things about Mom for a while." I stared at him. "What things?" "That she acts like the house is hers." I almost smiled at the strange truth of that sentence. "Because it is her house." Mark nodded slowly. "I know." "Then why didn't you say that?" He rubbed his hands together. "I didn't want another argument." There it was again. The fear of conflict. The same thing my mother had lived with for years. I realized something then. Mark had learned a different lesson from our childhood. Our mother had survived by keeping the peace. And somewhere along the way, Mark had begun believing that peace meant never challenging the person causing the problem. But real peace does not work that way. Sometimes silence only gives disrespect more room to grow. I told him about the changes I had made. He became upset. "So we're not welcome there anymore?" "That's not what I said." "It feels like it. You are welcome when Mom wants you there." "And Vanessa?" "The same." He shook his head. "She's my wife. And Mom is our mother." That ended the conversation. For several weeks things were cold between us. My mother noticed. Of course she did. She called me one evening. "Daniel, you need to make things right with your brother." I smiled sadly. "Mom, I'm willing to talk." "You know what I mean." "No, I don't think I do." She became quiet. Then she said, "I don't want my family breaking apart because of me." I closed my eyes. "Mom, please listen to me. This family is not breaking apart because of you. If there is a break, it is because people made choices." She did not answer. So I continued. "You spent your whole life carrying responsibility that belonged to other people. I won't let you do it now." For a moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "I don't know how to stop." That sentence broke my heart. I told her, "Then let me help you." From that day on I started visiting more often. Not to control her. Just to be there. We drank coffee in the mornings sometimes. We sat in the garden. We talked about ordinary things. And slowly I noticed a change. My mother began saying no. First it was small. Someone would ask if they could come over unexpectedly. She would say, "Today isn't a good day." Then she would look at me as if she had done something wrong. I would smile. Good. A few weeks later Vanessa called her. I was at the house when it happened. My mother answered. I could only hear her side of the conversation. "Yes, Vanessa." Pause. "Oh." Another pause. Then my mother looked at me. I could tell she was nervous. She said, "No. That won't work for me." I smiled. She listened again. Then she said more firmly. I said no. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. I did not ask what Vanessa wanted. I simply hugged her. My mother laughed nervously. "I feel terrible. You'll get used to it." And slowly she did. Meanwhile, the situation between Mark and Vanessa became more difficult. Mark eventually came to my house alone. He looked older than he had a few months before. We sat outside. He did not speak for a long time. Then he said, "I think I let things go too far." I looked at him. He continued, "I thought if I kept everyone happy things would be fine." I nodded. "That never works." "I know." He told me that Vanessa was angry about the changes to the house. She felt that she had been treated like an outsider. I understood why she felt that way, but feelings do not always make someone right. I asked him, "Do you think Vanessa is sorry?" He looked away. "I don't know." That answer mattered, because I had not wanted a performance. I did not need flowers. I did not need a long speech. I only needed one honest moment where she looked at my mother and understood the harm she had caused. But weeks passed, then months, and no apology came. My mother continued living peacefully. The garden grew beautifully. She started painting again, something she had loved when she was young, but had given up because life became too busy. One afternoon, I found her sitting near the window with a paintbrush in her hand. I watched her for a moment. She looked peaceful, really peaceful, and I realized that this was what I had wanted all along. Not the big house, not the expensive furniture, not the perfect family dinners. Just this, my mother sitting quietly in her own home, doing something she loved. Then one day the doorbell rang. My mother opened the door. Vanessa was standing there. I was in the kitchen. I heard my mother say, "Vanessa." There was a long silence. Then Vanessa asked if she could come in. My mother looked at me. I did not move. This was her decision. After a moment she stepped aside. Vanessa came into the living room. She looked different. Not physically, just quieter. She sat down across from my mother. I stayed in the kitchen because I did not want to control the conversation. But after a few minutes Vanessa called my name. "Daniel, you can come in." I walked over and sat down. Vanessa looked at my mother. Then she said, "I owe you an apology." My mother did not speak. Vanessa took a breath. "I treated your home like it belonged to me. I asked you to do things for me because I knew you would. And when Daniel wasn't there, I acted like your kindness was something I deserved." My mother looked at her quietly. Vanessa continued, "What I said at that party was cruel. I told myself it was a joke because I didn't want to admit what it sounded like. But it wasn't funny." The room became very quiet. Then Vanessa looked directly at my mother. "I'm sorry." My mother's eyes filled with tears. And to my surprise, she reached across and held Vanessa's hand. "I forgive you," she said. I sat back. Not because I thought everything was suddenly perfect. Forgiveness does not erase memory. It does not remove consequences. But sometimes it allows people to stop carrying pain they never asked to hold. Vanessa cried quietly. My mother did too. I stayed silent. Later, after Vanessa left, my mother asked me, "Are you angry?" I shook my head. "No. Really." I smiled. "I'm relieved." And I was. Because I had spent months believing that taking the house back from everyone else was the only way to protect my mother. But the truth was deeper than that. What I had really taken back was something she had lost slowly over time. Her right to decide. Her right to say no. Her right to be respected. The house was only a house. But what happened inside it mattered. Mark and I slowly repaired our relationship. It took time. He apologized to our mother too. That was important to me. He admitted that he had seen things he should have stopped. My mother forgave him, though she also told him something I will never forget. Being quiet does not always mean being kind. Mark began to cry when she said that. And perhaps he needed to hear it. We all did. Because sometimes we call silence peace when it is really fear. Sometimes we call someone easygoing, when they have simply been trained not to complain. Sometimes we accept little acts of disrespect because challenging them feels uncomfortable. And then one day we realize the small things were never small at all. They were warnings. Today my mother still lives in that house. The garden is fuller now. She has a little table on the porch where she drinks coffee every morning. She has painted several pictures that hang on the walls. Some are not very good, according to her. I think they are beautiful. Mark and Vanessa still visit. But now they call first. They ask. And if my mother says she is busy, they understand. That may sound like a very small thing. But for my mother it was a big change. For most of her life, she believed love meant always being available. always giving, always making room. She had to learn that people who truly love you will not punish you for having boundaries. And I had to learn something too. I thought buying my mother a house would solve everything. I thought if I gave her something beautiful, she would finally be protected from all the hardships she had known. But no amount of money can protect someone if the people around them do not respect them. Love is not only about what you give. Sometimes it is about what you refuse to allow. That day when Vanessa called my mother the help, I could have ignored it. I could have told myself it was a joke. I could have stayed quiet to avoid making things uncomfortable. But I had already seen what silence did. It made my mother question her own feelings. It made her apologize when other people hurt her. And I could not watch that happen anymore. So yes, I took the house back. Not from my mother. From everyone who had forgotten why it existed. I took back the open access. I took back the assumption that my mother would always serve others. I took back the idea that family could use her kindness without giving her respect in return. And in the end, I did not lose my family. We became more honest. The relationships changed. Some became uncomfortable before they became better. But real love can survive honesty. What cannot survive is pretending that pain does not exist. Sometimes the people we love most will ask us to keep the peace. And sometimes we should. But there are moments when peace comes at too high a price. There are moments when the quietest person in the room needs someone to finally say, enough. My mother had spent years taking care of everyone else. For once I wanted someone to take care of her. And I learned that taking care of someone does not always mean giving them more. Sometimes it means reminding them that they are already enough. That they do not have to earn a seat at their own table. That they do not have to apologize for resting in their own home. That kindness is a gift, not a job. And respect should never be something a person has to beg for. My mother still cleans when she wants to. She still cooks too much food when the family visits. She still offers coffee before anyone asks. That is simply who she is. But now when she is tired, she sits down. When she does not want company, she says no. And when someone offers to help, she lets them. The other day, I was washing dishes after dinner. My mother looked at me and smiled. You don't have to do that. I smiled back. I know. Then I kept washing. Because that is what love should feel like. Not like duty. Not like fear. Not like walking on eggshells in your own home. Just a simple choice to care for someone. And if there is one thing I hope my mother remembers for the rest of her life, it is this. A good heart should never make you someone's servant. And a person who truly loves you will never mistake your kindness for permission to disrespect you. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is not raise our voice. Sometimes it is simply standing beside someone we love and reminding the world, they deserve better.